never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi folks, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Today is a fantastic day for an interview because I've got Steve Wilson with me. Steve is a man who was literally teetering on a tightrope throughout all of his life. And that's the title of his book, because this man has been living with bipolar disorder. In other words, a state where from now and then you are so high in your mood, it's no longer believable. And on the flip side, there are the downs, lows that are so dark that they really can become a threat to you and your livelihood and everything that makes you. And imagine now a life of cycling through these highs and lows. What lessons can we learn from that? And that's where Steve comes in. Steve, welcome to my show.
Hi, Stephan. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, nowadays you're out there, you're leading two groups of people who are suffering, suffering is the wrong word, who are living, who are coexisting with this problem. And I'm on purpose now going away from a disease model because we know so much and so little about depression, about bipolar, and
Absolutely.
isn't it? It's very, very confusing. But there are those of you out there who are literally living it day in, day out. So,
Correct.
wow. What was when was the first time that you realized that you had these massive swings of mood?
Well, I've got to take you back to 1958 when I was 9 years old.
Mhm.
I used to always, on Saturdays, go to the movie theater, watch Westerns. They would have two movies in those days. They called them double features. And during the intermission between the two movies, I went up to get some popcorn and Coke. So I went over to the Coke machine and somebody put a dime in for me. I don't even know who. I didn't know who at the time. So I bought my Coke. Yeah, it was only a dime. And he said, "Would you help me with something here in the theater?" I thought he was an employee of the theater.
Hmm.
So we walked down the hall and he took me into the restroom, told me to take down my pants, and he sexually assaulted me. Now, 1958 is entirely different than today. I knew nothing about being raped. I didn't even know it could possibly happen. I didn't know if I had brought it on myself. I didn't know why he picked me out, but he did. So I started feeling that it was my fault, that I must have this radar about me that says, "Come get me." So I decided not to tell anybody, and I didn't for 30 years. My wife, who I married in 1972, I didn't tell her until 2015. So that's how it all started.
Hmm.
And then about 2 or 3 months later, my first depression came toward me. It's a horrible thing. It's not like just feeling the blues because you got a divorce, but it is really down and dirty. I thought no one loved me. Besides that, I didn't love anybody either.
Hmm.
I stayed away from my friends. I was an athlete, didn't do that anymore. I was a top student, didn't do anything anymore. So my grades plummeted. And as I found out was characteristic about bipolar was that it went away on its own. And it came back a couple of years later. And stayed even worse with me throughout high school and college. And then when I got home from college, I started getting suicidal ideations. Never had them before. One night, my dad and I didn't ever get along. And one night they had a barbecue at their house, and he pushed me away from cooking the burgers. There was a knife available, and I picked it up and said to myself, this is not right. And the next thing I knew was that I was admitted into a psychiatric hospital in Columbus, Ohio. I stayed at the hospital for 3 weeks. And the big thing that came out of that was my suicidal ideations were gone. And out of the 4 or 5 medications that were available, one of them helped. Didn't do much, but it helped a little bit. And that was 1971. And the pill didn't help enough that I was really bad until 1978, when my psychiatrist came in and said, I believe you're bipolar. I said, what the hell is bipolar? Never heard of it. And he said, well, I'm going to put you on lithium, which was the gold standard drug back then, probably is still today. And quickly, day or two, my symptoms were cut in about half. I still had a lot of bad symptoms, but the ones that were gone really made me feel better. So I suffered with that for the rest of my life. And it wasn't until the year 2000 that another psychiatrist gave me another drug called Paxil, and it took away a whole bunch more of the problems with bipolar.
It's interesting that you describe mainly the darkness. Did you experience highs? Did you experience times when you just couldn't keep it together because you're running so fast in your mind? You want to do everything, and your speech goes mad, and you buy 3 Porsches at the same time, don't care where the money is coming from, drive them too fast, crash them into a tree, buy a new car. That is often something that is a manic episode. Have you had something like that occurring in your life?
I want to start by telling you the 2 types of bipolar. Number 1 is bad depression, but not as bad as is possible, followed by the mania you're talking about. Now, I never had that.
Interesting.
I had the deep, deep lows and would then go into hypomania, which is about a 30% of what regular mania is. Now, that's bipolar 2. The mania is bipolar 1. So that was what I had. It was, I think it's, to my mind, not knowing how bad I would feel with mania, my guess is it's at least as bad or worse because of the terrible, terrible depression that I can't describe to anybody because they wouldn't understand.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, because you're so right. You're so right. There's so many golden nuggets in there, because the first thing is that there are still people out there in 2024 who have got this kind of attitude. Oh, just get over it. Just, take a concrete pill and be a man. And
Yeah.
these are people who I feel sad for, because they don't have an ounce of emotional intelligence, and they certainly have not yet experienced these deep lows that come for about 1 in 3 of us in our lifetime. We keep forgetting that. We think this is so, oh yeah, depression. That's what maybe women get after their babies, baby blues or something like that. In reality, a major depressive episode is actually very common in our lives. And
Well, I'll
mm,
tell you, I do and have done a lot of study on bipolar over the years. The biggest fact that I had no idea would come up until I started reading was that 20% of US citizens, 60 million people, suffer from some type of mental illness. That's if it's reported.
that's correct.
Another 50 or another 20% never try to tell anybody or get any help. So it's a huge, huge problem. And my podcasts that I've done 40 some of them. I do a fair amount of them outside the US, and they say the same thing. 20% doesn't
Mm,
change.
mm. And you're right. It's the underreporting, because if you look at some of the mental illnesses, or mental challenges, I rather like them to call, some of these challenges, they come along with shame and guilt, and
Yes.
that keeps our mouth shut. They come with a huge amount of denial. If you look at people who drink dangerously and drink far too much, and 95% of them will tell you, me, I'm not an addict. Come on. John over there, no, look at him. He's an alcoholic. Me?
Yeah.
Nah. So add that all in, then you can actually say that it is a much higher incidence of prevalence of mental health challenges, including addiction in the society. And if you then actually say that for each person affected, there is at least one other significant other uh, who is affected, then you could actually say, hell, the vast majority of people are affected by mental health challenges.
Absolutely.
So,
It is a much bigger problem than conventional type of illnesses,
mm,
but nobody in the
mm,
government or insurance or
mm,
anything else like that wants to help in a
mm,
big way.
mm,
The insurance companies want to pay out as
mm,
little as they can. They've taken away a chunk of what they used to pay the professional therapists and psychiatrists.
mm,
They've shut some people out because people in the professional ranks, many of them can't make enough money off of what the insurance pays them.
mm,
They have to jack up their prices. And all of a sudden, that 50% shows up that can't get therapy because they can't afford it.
mm, mm,
Um, you know, it's the government's fault too,
mm,
because they have in the US set up very little in the way of helping all of us.
mm,
The one thing they've done, if you can call it that, is set up clinics. And they're free if you qualify
mm,
and don't have enough money, and you can go to them. But here's a for instance that happened in the mental health support groups I run. I had one guy who was in terrible distress, and he went to his clinic. I mean, he was suicidal big time. He went to his clinic to get help, and they said, "We'd love to help you. You're my next opening for an appointment for any of the doctors is a month." Now, here's the question. What the hell could that guy do for a month that would keep him alive?
mm,
And then there's the other thing the brilliance of the US government provides, and that's disability, if you qualify for it. And so I've got a guy in my support group who is qualified for disability, for a long time. The disability limit is that you can make is about $20,000 a year. That's from the disability. This guy, my friend, decided he'd get a part-time job. And he did, because he was getting better. And he made $15,000 additional dollars a year, so he was making $35,000. Disability found out about it, and because he was over the $20,000, they took his disability away.
Uh-huh.
So instead of making $20,000 a year, he was making 15. And it never changes. It's going to go on for the next 50 years unless everybody helps to do something about it.
And I think that is such a key thing. Sadly, there are so many things that are contributing to mental health challenges. And often enough, it is our own doing, our own lack of knowledge, our own trying to escape our realities that is contributing. And I think one of the things that we have increasingly realized in Western medicine in the last 10, 20 years is the impact of nutrition, the impact of making sure that your vitamins and that the proteins in your food are there. That's of course quite nice to say if you have a bit of money to spend, but I know that the pricing at the moment in the United States and worldwide is just ridiculous.
In the US today, it probably takes to get good help, not the clinics. You probably have to make $80,000 a year if you're going to get really good therapy. How many people have that?
Exactly.
I mean, the median income in the US is about $30,000 or $40,000.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I don't know how high it is. 40 is the top. That's median.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that
it's the
means
same. We are
a
about
lot
the
of
same in
people
New
make a lot
Zealand
of money.
dollars. Yeah.
Pardon me?
We are about the same in New Zealand dollars.
Oh, okay.
So it's intriguing. Okay. And our costs of living are proportionally the same thing. So what you pay in US dollars, we pay in New Zealand dollars for the same
Okay.
items, let's say a block of cheese or something like that.
So, and there's another factor. Medication only works 50% of the time. So there are a whole lot of people, even if they can't afford therapy, the medication doesn't help. So there are other things they can do. There's behavioral therapy, there's cognitive therapy, there's EMDR. I don't know if you have these in New Zealand, but you probably do. And they're good. They help people a lot who don't get any help from medication. Here's one problem. If they're not getting any therapy that they can afford, they don't know anything about these programs. Nobody's telling them. You never see anything about them anywhere than in a mental health publication or an article somewhere. So that leads to where I am helping now. And that's that I have opened up 9 years ago 2 mental health support groups here in Phoenix, Arizona. I have about, on average, 14 or 15 people each meeting twice a week. And these people are the ones mostly who make less money, so they can't afford many times to go find a therapist. So their contact with what they can receive for medical or mental health attention is therapy groups like mine. They come to the groups, many of them. I don't know if it's a vast majority, but I've seen about 1,000 people over the years. And many of them have been sexually assaulted, physically assaulted, trafficked, kidnapped, all these things that mess up their head and they'll have to live with for the rest of their lives. Now, psychiatrists and therapists are trying to figure out if their mental abuse, whatever it be, is a cause of their mental illness. Or is it a combination of the abuse and genetics? They don't know. I'm going to tell you, in my years of doing this, it's both. That's just my opinion.
But
So
this is quite a logical thing for nowadays for me as a man who loves functional medicine, who likes to look holistically at a problem. When you are in such an environment where you have been trafficked, etc., your nutrition over years is shit. Your all the other influences, there will be huge amounts of stress that are bathing all your genes with cortisol and adrenaline. Your fight and flight will be constantly switched on. There will probably be adverse childhood experiences that are playing into that lay down core beliefs that are absolutely rubbish. Your behaviors will be compounded by a number of uh, other factors. So it is
right,
actually a very intriguing thing to make a statement that one thing causes the other. It's there are many factors that are playing together that we need to tease apart.
correct.
Steve,
And there,
I was just interrupted by a phone call there, and I'm not sure how much that came through. So what I'll do is I'll start again.
okay,
If you do, so we'll do 5 seconds pause, and then I start again.
okay,
It's so hard to make a statement of causality to say, okay, this is caused by this, because we sort of focus only on two factors, whilst life is so much more complicated. And we see that nowadays in the realm of functional medicine, where we understand that people who have had some very nasty trauma in their life, they often had other things happening. They
right,
lived in environments where the nutrition was so poor, where there was constant high levels of stress, adrenaline, cortisol, bathing all those genes, where there are other epigenetic factors that work themselves into the presentation. So there are many factors working together. That is a good thing because it allows us also to start on multiple points to start teasing the problem apart rather than just focusing on that and that. Because when you look at the genes, well, there's not so much you can do about the genes, at least nowadays, and that's probably a good thing. So, no genes, well, okay, that's what you've got. But what about all those epigenetic factors that are there? What about actually those core beliefs that were laid down due to adverse childhood experiences? What about your nutrition now? Okay, the last however many years, that was the past. We can't influence that, but we can influence right now. So there are so many things where we can actually do something together, even increasing, not even, especially increasing the knowledge, increasing the understanding that what we experience, those emotions, those lows, that they are actually not your fault. And that it's not just in your head, quotation mark, that you're not a nutter, that you're not, all those kind of labels, but actually by showing compassion, empathy, understanding, like you in your groups. That is a huge help. That is wonderful. So therefore, we can do something about a mental health challenge.
right. One of the big problems, two really, um, you have to be aware that the same situation for two people, the reactions will not be the same. One person might go into a deep depression, might become manic. The other person might not give a damn about it and not feel bad.
True.
So it all depends on what's going on with each person. And the next problem is that there's no cure for mental illness. It's a long, long journey. I've been fighting it for 60 some years. I'm 75 now.
Yep.
It took me from 58 to 2000, that's 42 years, to be able to really function as whatever you mean by a normal person.
Normal is overrated, honestly.
So I think that my message to people who are really suffering from a mental illness is really not to give up. If you don't follow what your psychiatrist tells you to do, you take a pill that it gives you and it works, and you say, I don't need this anymore, so you stop taking, you're going to go right back down the drain. Or if you're one of those people who says, I won't take any medication ever,
Yeah.
well, they're in trouble too. So it's all up to themselves to fight the fight. And most people in my groups have never, ever been told how difficult and how long a journey they're facing until they come to my groups.
Interesting. But having said that, I mean, that message alone, if told in maybe the wrong setting or the wrong frame of mind, can feel like a death sentence or a life sentence. Well, it is a life sentence, but in all the wrong ways if it is perceived. Yes. What are the responses that you see when people realize that?
The biggest response is a real letdown. Now, many of them don't do what is required to get better. They're looking for a quick fix, and they are destroyed practically when they come to know that it's a lifetime, long-term journey, long-term journey. And if I were getting that news without, not knowing about it, I would be really disappointed. But some of them grasp the situation and keep fighting. Now, I'll tell you a fact about my groups. If I were to take the 1,000 people or so that have been my groups, I would say that no more than 5% of them have gotten really well because they've followed the rules. The other 95 don't do what they should do, or just give up, or whatever. So it takes a strong person to be able to get through all this, because you're knocked back so damn many times. Every time you're good, hell, pretty soon you're going to get kicked in the ass.
But you raised the point, though. There are things that we can do, even without having access to proper mental health care, without having money. There's so many things. What do you think are some of the low-hanging fruit that everyone can access?
If you're saying everyone, they can access the therapies I was talking about. If medication works or it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. These groups like behavioral therapy, cognitive therapy, EMDR, help a bunch. I also, several of my people over the years have been in institutions, and I was one of the fortunate ones who was really helped. Most of them don't get any help. They are just put in these institutions, not all of them, but a lot of the institutions, and they try to calm them down, They'll give them high doses of medication that I'm not going to say they become uh, not able to do anything, but
Mm,
a lot of stuff. Very rarely do they try to test medications on the person to see what'll work for them. In other words, when their time is up, they go bye-bye, good luck.
mm, mm.
So,
But that's hard. That's hard because I mean, to start a psychiatric medication, regardless what it is, you need to go gentle. You need to go slow. You don't go in big doses in there, and therefore the brain takes time to equilibrate. So, simply spoken, a trial of an antidepressant might actually take weeks and months to actually see
correct.
if it works or not. So, therefore, you can't just stay months in an institution where clearly so many people need help and where clearly there are limits on the resources.
Well, um, God, I had a thought. I can't. Let's go on. I can't remember what it was. I'm an old man.
No, that's all good. You are sharp as a tack, my friend. Don't you worry. No, I believe that it's lovely actually to hear you speaking about the benefits that you have received from psychotic medications and that some of them have been more or less lifesavers. I've had quite a number of guests who had very strong feelings the other way, and there was a
What is
tendency.
the other way?
Well, drugs are evil. They really messed me up. They didn't help me, and when I would try to get off them, I had huge problems with regards to withdrawal symptoms. So it was actually quite an intriguing array of people I've had on my show, and all of their experiences are true for them. And there are many people out there who have not had success with medications and have suffered tremendous side effects. So all that is true. So I loved it when you said there is not a quick fix. There is not a here, take 2 tablets of that and now right into the sunset as a happy man. Yeah, my ass. That will never happen because life is full of challenges. And if we actually don't start to work multifactorial on all of the things that are important for us, then we really, really, really struggle.
Well, one of the problems that I see all the time is that most people suffering from mental illness do not become their best advocate.
Mm.
They'll start on a new medication. They'll keep trying it, trying it. It may help a little, but not a lot. And maybe it's because they started it out at a real low dose. They are not prepared in their own mind to go to their professional and say, something isn't working. Can we change?
Yeah.
It might just be a simple change as raising the dose. It may be that they're taking the wrong medication, but there's a whole bunch out there that they can try. They're afraid to upset the psychiatrist or therapist.
No,
And they got to remember one thing, and they don't remember this, but they're paying that guy to work on their behalf. And so many of them get in there and don't tell them what's really going on.
good. That is beautiful. I mean, that is a beautiful insight. You're quite right. But many of the patients don't take ownership. It is it's not just that they actually know exactly what is going on. They're taking the pills and try to somehow get on with life. They are not doing the work that might be required. They're maybe not going and just sitting down and actually spending time with themselves, trying to explore maybe aspects of their trauma and maybe learning new skills, new habits that are maybe more productive. There are so many mindfulness exercises, etc., that can help us in our daily life, and that then maybe give us a greater insight in what we really experience, give us a greater overview of actually. I'm still only 2 out of 10 in my mood. Maybe if I was to go higher in the dose, what are actually the doses? Many of my patients have zero clue of the medications that they are taking. When I say my patients, as an anesthetist, they come to my clinic having their shoulder operation, etc. And I say, oh, well, which drugs are you on? Oh, I've got this list here. And I think one of them might be for cholesterol. I don't know. That's typical. That's quite typical, unfortunately, and I see that as a problem. So we are not teaching our patients to take extreme ownership and know more about a chronic illness than their doctor does. Because that's really what I want my patients to see. Because
Right.
the aspects of their chronic illness are unique to them. There is always a huge variation of presentations. Well, me as a doctor, you just walk in and sit there and, well, how the hell do I know what is going on in your head? And how the
Mhm.
hell do you know what is going on in your head if you don't do the work, if you don't do some journaling, if you don't do some simple exercises that actually allow you to be in control?
That is exactly true. And there is one huge factor that either really helps the individual or really hurt, and that's the support or lack of support
Hmm.
they get from friends, family,
Oh, good,
fellow sufferers.
good, good.
In my experience, because it happened to me, remember this is 58, so most people didn't even know anything about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I got no support.
Yeah.
All the signs were there. All I did was watch TV all day. All the signs were there. No
Uh,
one had a clue what I was going through.
yeah.
No one supported me. So I was pretty much on my own. Now you'd think over those 50 years, things would change. People don't know how to react to someone who is
Oh,
off the.
true. Very, very true. And I guess that's where the strength of support groups come in.
Yes.
Because when we are suffering from a mental health challenge, we think, oh my God, it's all me. There's guilt, shame. No one could possibly understand how I feel. No one could possibly have been in a similar situation. These are the lies that depression tells us. And
Well,
that's where a
go ahead.
support group comes in, because then people that you look at and think, oh, he or she really got it together there. And then you sit next to them and they suddenly open up and you think, really? I feel exactly the same. And it's just such an eye opener. It's such a beautiful feeling where when you're witnessing it to happen in someone, then you see the cracks appearing in their armor, in their walls that they have created around them that isolated them so much. And it's such a beautiful thing to see.
Well, you're exactly right. The biggest thing, if you want to call it just a thing, in my groups is that people learn that they're not the only ones who suffer from this thing.
Mm.
And that makes most of them just relieved. And now I'm going to tell you something else. When people can call me up, let me know they want to join my group, a high percentage of them come one time.
Right.
They say, groups are not for me. Doesn't matter how good or bad I am, they're already preconditioned to not come back. And that is so sad because they don't give it a chance.
Yeah.
Because it takes 10 or 20 times before you start feeling really good. And you can't
Oh,
figure
no,
it out one
oh,
or
it's the
two.
same. No, that's fine. It's the same with the gym. Oh, I go there once. No, lift some weights. Okay, either
Same thing.
I'm healthy now. That's it. I'm fit. I can look like Schwarzenegger. I've lifted 2 kilogram dumbbell. Exactly. It is. The fact is, we become really good in what we practice, and if we practice anxiety, if we practice depression, then we become really, really, really good in it. And I think
Mhm.
many of us have been there. We have never practiced joy. We have never practiced those modalities that are over a longer period of time giving us the resilience and turning us into the survivors or even into the thrivers that can really make a difference in the world, starting by making a difference in themselves. That is not
Well,
to say that we can talk away or walk away the depression. No, but it's very, very difficult. One of my guests put it like that: depression hates a moving target. So, for
mhm.
example, when you actually start doing more physical activities in your life, chances are anxiety levels will drop down, and chances are your mood levels will increase. Maybe there is something there.
Well, that's great in theory, but I've experienced so many people who've given up. The vast majority are not looking for a fix, no matter how long it takes. They've accepted their existence, and in their mind, they have to put up with it forever. And there's just no way to get the word out
Hmm.
to enough people except through your program, the podcast that I get on. And I tell you what, it's going to take years to change the thinking in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
country, and probably yours. People would go up to me, my family would go, we make a lot of money. You've got everything you want. Quit being lazy bum. And that's the kind of, and another thing they say, oh, well, just go out and take a walk. You'll feel better. That hurts. That
No,
hurt
you're
me
so.
as much as
Oh,
anything else.
you're so right, my friend. These are the platitudes. This is the bullshit. No, 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 I'm not talking. I'm not talking about oh, you feel bad, go for a walk. Bullshit. No, but if you incorporate activity every single day in your life, then you're actually changing literally some of the hormones in your body. When you are more active, you actually chalk up little wins. Hey,
Right.
yesterday I was on the couch. Today I walked 500 meters. Well, that's a win. End of the story. So you can actually say to yourself, wow, I did something for myself. And that feels good. And then maybe you say, well, actually, you know what? I've got this bit of dirt behind the house or in the apartment block that no one uses. Why don't I put a little bit of earth there and put some spinach in there? And
Right.
next thing, you have done another win. Wow, I created a little kitchen garden. And now I actually put some of the spinach on my food. And it feels gorgeous. So you can chalk up wins. And with that, I don't mean, you feel bad, you go for a walk. No, you change habits. You
Yes.
celebrate your life. You maybe even start journaling to actually say, well, if a life is worthwhile living, then it's worthwhile recording. So you might actually start writing things down. And when you start writing things down, there will be some good things, which are the wins, or there will be some emotions that are coming out, maybe emotions that you had previously not really taken into consideration. Things maybe from your childhood. And then maybe, just maybe, your subconscious is actually saying, hey, I'm now ready. It doesn't matter how many decades later to address that. And now you
You
start to address a root cause
right.
of some of the
You
problems.
mentioned something that really works for about half of my people, no matter who it is.
Mm,
That's journaling.
yeah.
In other words, writing in your diary
Mm,
that used to be in my time, and they get so much out of it.
mm,
It's just incredible what that can do for you. It's very difficult at the beginning, But then all of a sudden, maybe a few weeks later, you'll find you can't wait to get to the journal that day. You can write down all the
Abs-
shit that's happened to you. Good.
Absolutely. Man, yeah, this is my book, My Steps to Sobriety. That's the picture of the third edition that is soon being released. When I started the first edition, My Steps to Sobriety, one day I had a writer's block. And I didn't know what to write. And I forced myself to do some crazy writing. It's a technique where you just start writing. And I was on a keyboard, so I wrote shit, there's a chicken and the fire is on and whatever. I started writing crap. And suddenly I had this out of body experience where my fingers kept writing. And I began to look over my fingers. What the hell are you writing there? And out came one of the strong chapters in my book where a memory flooded back, insights flooded back, etc. We have got about 60, 80,000 thoughts a day, but 80% of them are negative.
Mhm.
But if I ask you one thought the day before yesterday, could you remember one thought, one specific thought that you had the day before yesterday? Probably not. So there's so much crap going through our head. Yet when we actually slow down to write something down, suddenly instead of crap in a digital 1-0 maybe mess, suddenly words come out that have meaning, that have emotion, that have a power. And you write that down, and suddenly you read something and you think, huh, and it was hidden in your subconscious all the time. And I think that is the beauty of journaling. There is sometimes we just don't spend the time to really calm our mind down and focus on something here and now, i.e., the active thing of writing something down.
Well,
And
that's exactly what happened to me when I wrote my book. Now, I knew everything I was going to write about, but I didn't know how to write it. I'd been a sports writer way when I was young,
yeah,
totally different thing. And I knew what I was going to write about, but I didn't know how to write it. Once I got into it, it took a long time to write the book, but it was fairly easy. Just finding the proper words, and they came to me.
uh,
I've gotten mostly 4 and 5 stars. I've got over 40 reviews. And so somebody thinks I wrote it well. Problem is, when you're self-published,
yeah.
very few people buy it. It's just you want to know what the average number of books are sold in, we'll say the US,
Yeah.
out of 2 million books that are on the shelves today. And we have authors who write mysteries and all those things, sell millions of copies. Still, the average number of books sold is 250.
That's about right, isn't it? And then you're lucky, and yeah, you're right. You're right. But I think the key thing that we need to be clear about is our mission in life. And many of us have no clue what I'm talking about is. They have never sat down and tried to figure out their why, their reason for existence. And when you have gone through a lot of trauma in your life and through a lot of lows and have come out the other side, then you feel a certain drive within yourself to actually make this world a better place. And in in your case and in my case, we both have decided to actually write a book or books, and it's beautiful. It was
Yeah.
a great therapy for both of us, probably. And it is something where we feel compelled to tell the people out there is help, there is hope. And I think that is so beautiful. That is
That's
a power
exactly.
that we both have, a conviction that we can make this world a better place. And for that, I commend you. For that, I say thank you very much, Steve, that you actually had the guts to write those things down, to write about those things that are really hard to put into words, leave alone to open up to someone. I mean, here you were talking about how long it took you to open up about the initial rape, the initial assault, so many people will never open up about those stories. But
Right.
you are providing a role model for people out there, for people within your family to be to be strong and to be open and wonderful and let their light shine. So it's so beautiful.
Well, I'll tell you, it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. I don't know how many people I've affected. If I've affected just a few, it's
Mm,
great. But somebody's got to figure out a way to get the real word out
mm,
and tell people what the hell's going on. Because most people in this country who aren't affected with mental illness don't even give a damn about it. It doesn't bother them. And they have all this stigma against it
so
that
true.
they think that we're all just crazy people.
Oh dear. Unfortunately, you're right. But then again, luckily, things are changing a little bit for the younger generations. But I think it's the people in the 30s, 40s, 50s, typically the 50s now, that are still influenced by the past, i.e., be a man, have all these kind of wrong Marlboro core beliefs, and that they need help. I mean, this is certainly there are many farmers out here who are truly suffering in New Zealand.
Right. Well,
You're
I'll
an
tell you,
amazing. Yeah, sorry.
I'm going to tell you something. Um, Again, I've lost my thought. Oh, no, I don't. So go on to something else.
Hey, Steve, you're an amazing man. Thank you very much for being so
Thank you
open,
for
so
having me.
so authentic. So it's beautiful. You had very very deep insights there, and you're there for a group of society who maybe otherwise be actually quite lost, and how many people are suffering in silence, and how many people have no money to access the right care, how many people, even if they have money, are living in areas where it's hard for them to actually get, you know, get the right care. So no, you're an amazing man. If people want to get hold of you,
Mhm.
how can they do that?
Well, I've got a website,
Hmm.
and you'll have to do me a favor because I can never remember
Oh, don't
anything.
worry. We put it
Tell
down
them to
there
look
into
up
the description of the YouTube and of the podcast.
all that stuff. I've got a website. I'm on Instagram.
Yeah,
I'm on Facebook.
yeah,
Um, I'll give you my email.
absolutely.
It's swwilson.wilson@gmail.com. You can anybody who wants to. And I tell you what, they usually don't. I've only had a couple of people over
Yeah.
the 40 or 50 podcasts I've done. And I want to invite anybody who is listening out there who would like to join my groups. I'm independent, so I'm not with some nationwide
Yeah.
company that is sponsoring me. And I charge nothing. I just do this on my own time. And they can send me the email and send me a request for me to invite them. Now, I don't know what time it is in New Zealand, but my meeting tonight in the US is Arizona time, 7 o'clock. And
Very
that's the
good.
same for Tuesday and Thursday. So how far apart are we?
Well, it is now 9:30 in the morning, but it will be quite some time until this beautiful interview is aired.
That's fine.
So
That's
so
what everybody
exactly.
says. I'm used to it.
Steve, you're a fantastic man. Thank you very much for the work you're doing. Thank you so much for being out there. It was a lovely, lovely interview. I sent you all the energy you need to keep going because it's people like you who leave an impact, people like you who are my heroes. And I found that an amazing, amazing thing. So
Well,
thank
you're
you
doing
so
the
much.
same thing as me, so you keep it up too.
Cool. Thank you. And you guys
Thanks.
out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.